So let's work a little bit more on our fireballs, and we'll just give them a little bit more oomph, if you will. So let's go find our projectile. This is our projectile. Okay, let's make it so that it's let's make it a trigger, and inside our projectile let's write a little bit more script. And basically what we can do, well, at least for now, we can instantiate, you know, when we hit something, we can instantiate something there. Since we don't have any pooling or any other form of pooling, I believe. Yeah, we didn't make any. We can just instantiate it for now, and later we'll actually be pulling this. So we can use on trigger ender. We also have collider other, and we can say if let's try with everything that can collide. If we hit our own collider, then we'll start to ignoring those layers. So we can say whatever comes in here, then just instantiate explosion prefab. Make it to have your own position. Well, yeah, let's give it its own rotation as well, although it doesn't really matter for the rotation because the particles just fly everywhere. Okay, as game object, it's going to instantiate that, and it's going to need something, I believe. Yeah. Game object geo, and well, after that we can just destroy this game object, and of course you can just check if you hit something, and if that hit was a player, if other dot or maybe yet if enemy states, or actually let's cast it like here, es binal, if not if, es equals, or now that I think about it, other dot get component, let's do get component in parent, enemy states. Okay, and if es not equals null, then do es, I believe we have do damage, but yeah, that requires an action. So let's say es dot health minus 40 or something like that. Okay, it doesn't matter, we're going to change all that later. Now, and yeah, this would probably, let's see how this could work. We should assign the prefab, it's in our particles. I'm going to assign the I think it was let's see, fireball hit, I believe it is. Let's see. Yeah, fireball hit. Okay, you will find it in the particles, fireball hit, and I think we have two for some reason. Fireball hit and fireball. Yeah, for some reason there are two of these. So let's delete the second one. So on the fireball projectile, the explosion prefab, drop the fireball, hit, and hit apply. Let's hit save. Let's try it now. Let's lock on and let's throw the fireball. Okay, so we actually have destroying fireballs, and if whatever we hit, it's going to still play the particle. Well, of course, because the rigid body might be inside the wall, you might not see the whole particle as we see in there, but yeah, that still works. And there's even more you can do with fireballs, and that's probably yeah, let's just found the bug. So let's go into our notes, let's lock them, and let's add the bug in here. I mean, you don't have to, but I'm probably going to forget. So now that we have more proper fireballs, let's add and create a new spell. We're going to go into our spell items, and we're going to work with the second one, which is fire breath. Okay, it's going to be spell type. We're going to change that to looping, because it's not a buff. And we have all the rest. Yeah, for right now we won't need this anymore. We want target animation, which is going to be hold spell start, and what I've already did is that basically on the shield left and right I have these three animations: hold spell start plus the prefix if it's the left or the right, and then it goes into a looping, and then it's going to go into hold spell end and simply revert back to this. When you are for the transition to happen, we need to have spellcasting false, and the same goes for the left hand. Okay, yeah, this doesn't matter. So into our script now, if we open up the state manager, we have the handle spellcasting that is going to come into play. And we also have the spell action. So for this, it's going to stay the same. Okay, there's no need to change this, but basically for the spell casting is what needs to change. So for example, let's also save our spell type in here. Spell type, and we're going to say current spell type. Let's store the spell type in here. Spell type will be slot dot type, and because this is kind of a special case, we're going to say if current spell type equals spell type dot looping, return. Okay, let's leave it like that, and let's save. Let's see what error is this. What? Oh, it's the yeah, we want the type from the spell, not the slot, and this will be spell type. Okay, let's close this. Let's go into our resources again to check spell type. We have our particle, we have our animation, spell type is looping. Let's hit play. Let's change the spell, and if we press, we were holding down the RB, it's yeah, it's the behavior we want. Of course the animation is kind of you know, looking wherever, so we should all probably fix we should fix that as well. But for the most part, it's kind of what we want. But we're going to fix that as well with IK or with the animations. The problem that we have with animations looking like this is because they weren't created on top of the skeleton, and then the retargeting animation inside mechanism could be whatever. Okay, so we're just trying to work with whatever animations we have. But yeah, right now we're just sitting, we're just stuck on this. So let's go and see. And it's basically the same idea with how we're blocking or what happens when we are blocking. We're detecting an action, detect item action, and let's see if we're in action, can move, run, jump, undo spellcasting, close the door. Okay. Inside the detect action, we have can move, using item is spellcasting. So if he is spellcasting, he's going to return back. Spell action, we don't have anything. Handle spellcasting. Well, let's see where this is called. So down here, as you can see, we are just checking if you are doing a spellcast, you're not doing anything either on the above or does this. So that means in here we can say if spellcasting, if not spellcasting, let's see, if right bumper equals false and left bumper equals false. Okay, so if either of these are false, let's say is spellcasting is false. We can also put, you know, a minimal amount of spellcasting. We'll see. Close this. Hit play, and I'm going to hold down the right bumper, and when I leave it, it's going to revert back to what it was. Okay, back to idle, which is pretty cool. Okay, so let's fix now our projectiles. Yeah, let's do that. Let's see how we can call them. I believe we have our not the projectile. We want our particle basically. So the particle we are creating it from here. Create spell particle. Let's see. Let's bring the inventory manager in. And this is going to find the particle, it's going to instantiate it, and it's going to parent it under the left or right button. Okay, so if it's going to be creating it on the runtime spell, that means we just need to find the runtime spell or the current spell basically. So if we get inventory manager current spell, we can say current spell dot and not the instance, we want the particle, current particle, and it's stored as a game object. Let's go write a bit more logic onto our current particles, to our particles mostly, not just current. Let's go into our scripts. Let's first make sure we don't already have it. Forward, forward breath. Yeah, we don't. Okay. So let's go right. Let's go into items, script, and we're going to call this particle hook. This is going to sit on top of all your particles, or well, the particles that need it, basically. Let's create a namespace. Let's do an init. Let's do a public void emit. Maybe we can pass also a float or an integer. Integer value. Let's assign it as 1. And we need particle system or particle system, particles. So on init, the particles are going to be get component nents. We want the plural particle system. So on emit, let's do a for loop. Particles dot length particles I dot emit and the value you are passing. Oops. Or yeah, I think one way to do that will be that, but if this creates spell particle, let's see, maybe we don't need this, but this could come into play later. But instead of doing that, let's see if we go into our state manager, and instead of doing that, we can say current particle dot set active to true. Although yeah, we're probably going to need that. We're going to need the particle hook because we want to use emit instead of closing and opening our. Okay, there's no errors. Hit play. Yeah, that's the fireball. Okay, so yeah, it might be something. Let's write a bit more code to our state manager. Let's make sure the inventory manager, the current spell dot current particle dot transform dot rotation is the same with our own rotation. When we are closing or when we are stopping the spellcast, we are also closing our own particle. Okay, so this is somewhat closer to what we want. Well, actually this is pretty close, if not what we want. But yeah, we just want this to be a little bit more elegantly. But the idea is the same. Okay, we are basically just throwing fire from our hands. Which is pretty cool if you think about it. Whee! Yeah, this is pretty cool actually. But yeah, the animation is kinda killing it at this point because he's right on the side. So let's see if we can change this. Let's see if we can say when we are creating the particle, create spell particle, bool is left, and we're going to say bool parent under root. Let's start with false. We're going to say Yeah, this is going to instantiate it, and if parent under root is false, otherwise, excuse me for that. So if we want to parent it under a root, then the parent, it should be just be instance current particle transform dot parent be transform dot around transform. Now the position, we should probably think about it. Oops. So it's going to be parented over here around. Let's create an empty game object, create empty. Okay, this will be 1, so let's go with somewhere over here, so about 1.4 and a little bit forward. The animation over here, it makes him sit forward, but it's not going to be like this. Let's round this 1.4 and 0.4. The rotation doesn't matter, we only want local position. Or actually it matters, because we don't know our rotation, what's going to be there. So we have local rotation will be yeah, actually let's just make sure it assigns a 0, and for local position let's create a new vector, as we said, 1.4 and 0.4. Okay, everything else can stay the same. Create spell particle, then when we are calling this, spell is mirrored, and we're just going to say if the spell type equals looping, and only then it's going to parent it underneath your, where is it? Underneath the root. Otherwise it's going to parent it under your left hand. Let's close this, play. Let's see that the fireballs are working fine, and they are. Let's see the fire breath, it should be around his chest area, and yeah. Okay, maybe probably we should put him a lot more forward. So let's do that, and I see that it doesn't close it, so we should also fix that as well. Let's change this, let's hard code it, let's make it so maybe 0.9. 0.9, let's raise this a little bit, 0.5. Let's see why the spellcasting yeah, that's why it didn't close. This will do a return, because this closed but this reopened it again, unless we can just do this and remove this return. Okay, a little bit better, and when we are closing it leaves. But I don't like that it just closes this, it closes right away. So let's use what we were starting to write, the emit. So basically, yeah, this is basically done. So let's go into our particles, yeah, and let's add everything instead of the heat. Let's go and add component particle hook, Okay, no need to do anything else. It's going to find it by itself. It's going to find the particles and assign them. But we need to go into our inventory manager, and instead of just using set active, they're always going to start as closed particles. And they actually shouldn't be looping also. So let's go see, let's think. First we need runtime spells. Let's go runtime spells. Let's also create the particle hook. Particle hook, let's call this p hook. Where we assign the current particle, we should also be assigning the particle hook now. Let's see where it is. Current particle. Over here. Okay, it's going to assign this as well. And it should be instance dot parent hook instance dot current particle dot get component, or let's just do in children just to be safe. Particle hook, close this, and we also have the hook. So let's uncomment this. We want them to be active. In the state manager, let's also do the same. They will start as active, but that means we have to go into our variables or to our particles now, and not the variable heat, variable hand, variable breathe. Remove the looping, and actually the play on awake we're going to remove, and the smoke. Let's close the looping. Yeah, I don't really know which one should be. Fire, play on awake, no, and play on awake is closed also. Let's see what this is going to do. Yeah, this will start to emit them, but because they are looping, they will always play. So let's see if we remove the loop for both of these. Fire breathe. Actually, yeah, I think we did something wrong. And in here, this is not really needed anymore because we are creating it under our own parent. Let's say inventory manager current spell dot current part, not current particle, particle hook dot emit. Let's go with 1 because this is going to emit every frame. Probably it's going to be too little for this, and we have an error. And oh yeah, we should also init first. So just to be safe also, we can say if particles equals null, return. Init. Okay, so this has, yeah, this is a little bit better. We might be casting fewer particles, but as you can see, we are creating more, yeah. And I think this, the particles, at least for this one, should benefit if we do inherit velocity. And the multiplier will be 1, so it's going to be the same velocity. And let's do also the same for the smoke that is underneath here, and let's apply. Close this, hit play, and we do inherit velocity because the particles, we want to have our own velocity. Okay, so apart from the animation being whatever, we have, yeah, the behavior is what we want, which is pretty cool if you think about it, and pretty funny. Okay, let's continue with the rest. Right now we're not just doing the we're just creating the behaviors for each type of different spells. Doesn't mean we are creating a spell that just for the fire breath or something like that. You can have spells different that aren't, the fire breath. You will see what I mean in a bit. State manager. Yeah, so this works exactly fine, but we need to have some special behavior in this case of what everything should be doing. But before we see that, yeah, I think this works exactly correct. Let's see the fireballs, what they are doing now, in case we have to change something. And I think we don't. Like this played, yeah, it plays similar to what was before. So we are correct at this place. Cool. Now, let's create something else. Let's create a new spell. Resources, spell item, have fireball, fire breath. I'm going to duplicate the array, and I'm going to change this to dark. I don't want the underscore. Let's call this dark shield. And the icon, I forgot to add an icon, I believe. So let's just take the shield as it is. It's still going to be looping, but in this case I'm going to ignore the fire breath, and I'm going to create the new particle I've made, which is in here. But I need to make it so that it's not looping and it doesn't play on awake, and the same for the other particles. Okay, hit play, and now, oops, we need to also assign it onto our controller. Let's add it as the third one. Let's call this dark shield. Let's open it, and now instead of having the fire breath, we now have a shield. For example, like the shields that the Dark Wraith have, or Death Knights, or no, I think Dark Wraith have, that they were opening on the right hand. They were having the, yeah, you know which one I mean, I believe. Okay, so why we did this was that we have two things that do similar things, that they use the same behavior, but the results will be different. Like this should be shield, so for example nobody could hit you. It's like holding the shield from your left hand. And this should be casting, this is not, okay, this will be casting fire, so it actually damages enemies that are inside it. Okay, so how can we change this? How we can separate our abilities? Well, now we're going to go into some more advanced territories, and we're going to go into into our spells, spell items, and not on the scriptable object, on the spell itself. And we can say in here, let's add a simple string, and we're going to call this spell effect. And we're going to be reusing this if it's looping, if it's well, projectiles we probably won't, but we can still add effects. Okay, so for the spell effect, we should probably also copy where we copy the rest of the stuff. Final references from to dot spell effect from dot spell effect, and let's see where else we are using this. We are copying this projectile. Okay, now let's create a new script, and it's going to serve as the place where we could be able to be taking all these effects. We basically want all the effects that has to do with our, with our spells and stuff like that, and have them in one place. And because we're going to be using the IDs for this, so every effect will be like an event basically, but yeah, you'll see what I mean in a bit. Controller, let's go to managers, and let's call this spell effects manager. Let's close this, let's close this over here, namespace. Let's delete this. Let's make this as a singleton, public static spell effects manager. We call the dictionary, and it's going to take a string, and yeah, let's go with an integer. Yeah, let's go with an integer, and we're going to call this as effects. So actually let's do this on awake. So what we're going to be doing here, we're going to be adding variables, or we're going to be adding stuff that we're going to need inside the spell effects. So, and let's create public void cast effect, or use spell effect or something similar, spell effect. Now if we get the state manager, or our own state manager, P is going to, or C is going to be the caster. From our own state manager we have access to everything. Okay, we can access our animator, we can access our stats, everything like that. Similarly, in case we need it, our enemy states, if we can have effects that affect both us and the enemy. But not all states, not all effects can access the enemy state, can have effect on that. So we'll start it, we initialize it as null. But basically over here we're going to have a switch, and or actually we're going to have an integer. We're going to say get effect, return 0 for now, and for this switch let's fix this a little bit. Okay, so use spell effect. Let's also pass the effect ID, sort for ID, and we're going to use this. We're going to be passing the ID in here. This will be returning us the actual effect from this. And over here we're going to be saying integer index get effect ID, and we're going to have a switch with the index, and basically we're going to be saying case 0 break. Okay, now what we're doing in this one, because we want to use IDs, because there's no way in hell you could just say that, you know, the fire breath effect is the number 15. Okay, there's no way you could ever remember that. So we're going to be writing fire breath effect. We're going to be giving them IDs, but we don't want to going through lists to find a proper, you know, a proper behavior for that. We want to be using we want to be basically getting the IDs. We're going to be creating them as integers, and we'll be storing them depending on the ID inside our dictionary, and from the dictionary we're going to be passing the ID, turning that into an integer, and it's going to be handled in here. Okay, it might feel a little bit more complicated, but you will see. Let's say, for example, I want to add the fire breath effect. I'm going to notice where I initialize this on the awake, and I'm going to say add. This is the ID we should be remembering, and I'm going to say fire breath. Next, I want to have the integer that's going to reflect for the behavior in here. Let's go with 0. Of course, you can change this to 15, to 20, to whatever you want, but it probably makes a little bit more sense if you go, with you know, the way you are creating them. And this is, nobody else will notice this. Darkseal, just also make sure that you don't have the IDs, both of these are unique. Case 1 and do a break. Now, get effect, let's write this also the way it should be, and it should start with an index or with an integer. Index should be -1, and we'll do if sfx dot try get value, the ID, and output it on the index. Okay, if it's correct, then return index. Or actually, we don't even need this, we can say just return index. However, in here, if index is -1, return, or not return, yeah, return, but before you return, throw a debug log, spell effect doesn't exist. So if you wrote an effect wrong, then that means you're not going to break the error, it's just nothing going to happen. Okay, and let's just write it in here also, doesn't matter. So now we need to write basically functions for each spell, and you can write it in here in this script, or you can write it into a static script. It's going to be the same. Let's write it in here, because why not? So for example, we have our fire breath. We can say void fire breath. The fire breath only wants the state manager from the caster, and we now just want a way to make somebody, you know, cast let's see, we basically just want a box collider on top of us where we are doing the effect. Well, actually, yeah, we want both of these. So let's go into our controller and let's create another collider. Let's copy the parent collider, and this one will go into say breath or casting collider. Or basically not casting. Let's go fire. Let's name it fire breath because I can't think anything else at this moment. And let's make it so it's a little bit like it feels like that. Okay, and maybe a little bit closer over here. So if somebody is inside this is not a parent collider. If it's somebody is inside this, is going to be taking damage. We need to store this somewhere though. Let's do it also in the inventory manager. And we have backstab. Let's see. Inventory manager, public game object, breath collider. Because yeah, it's not just a fire breath, you could reuse it for other stuff, and because I know we're going to use this later, we can say public game object, let's do this block collider. Okay, now let's assign this as well, block collider and fire breath collider. Let's leave the block collider for later. And when we are doing on our state manager, when we are spell casting, we can have a few delegates. Let's write them in here, because why not? We can say delegate. Let's call this spell delegate void spellcast start. Okay, and actually I think this needs brackets, and we also want to delegate void spellcast stop. To use the delegates we need public spellcast start, spellcast start, and public spellcast stop, spellcast stop, and we want this to be public as well. Okay, so that means spellcasting, spellcast stop. The spellcast stop is easy. When we are stopping the spellcast, we're going to say if spellcast stop is not null, then simply run spellcast stop. Okay, and the start we might need to actually, yeah, we don't need to. We already know where the spellcast starts. For example, it's going to be inside our spell action. So down here we can say if spellcast start is not null, spellcast start, run it. Okay. So where this is going to come into play, we can say, we can go into our inventory manager and let's write a few more variables. So we can say public void open breath collider, public void close breath collider, public void open block collider, public void close block collider. Okay, now open breath collider, and actually we can also do something else. We'll see this in a bit. Let's close this into a region. Let's call this not. Let's think. Well, let's call this delegate calls because I can't think of anything else. And region. So to open your breath collider, you can say breath collider set active true. You'll be shocked to know if you close the breath collider is going to be set active. To close, open block collider will be block collider set active true. Block collider set active false. Okay, we have our delegate calls, so that means if I go now into my state manager, and not to the state manager, into my spell effects manager, into the fire breath, what I can say is on the set, on the and spell cast start. Okay, we're going to be getting inventory manager dot open breath collider, and then spellcast stop set dot inventory manager dot close breath collider. We don't want this. Okay, so we are assigning the delegates, so that means into use spell for the fire breath we're going to be using inside our switch statement. We only need the state manager in this case. For the dark shield we're going to be doing pretty much the same. State manager says, let's copy all this, but instead of the open breath collider we're going to be saying open block collider, and in here we're going to be saying close block collider. Take this and assign it in here. Let's expand on this a little bit more. And yeah, the IDs can also be the same names as these ones, or well, the spell effects, it doesn't matter. On the state manager, let's create another delegate, and it's going to be the in between, which is going to be saying public delegate void spellcast loop. Let's make this, oops, loop, not coop, loop. Public spellcast loop spellcast loop. Okay, so that means instead of doing this in here, we can just drop it inside our spellcast loop. So if we have a looping but it doesn't have any particles to play, it's going to be controlled by the spell effects instead of anything else. So let's see. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do it this way. So on the inventory manager again, I'm just doing it inside the inventory manager. You could just create a dedicated script for this, but the inventory manager, I believe, has everything. Because, you know, it's a lot of item based. We can say emit spell particle. Okay, and maybe write this. No, current spell, it's already current spell, so we don't need it. Let's copy that and say, oops, current spell, phook, emit. So on the state manager, in here we should be saying if spellcast loop is not null, then do spellcast loop, you know, execute your spellcast loop. So in your spell effects manager, we can also say when we initialize the fiery breath, for the spellcast loop we want say dot inventory manager dot emit spell particle. Let's do the same for the dark shield. Yeah, exactly the same. And this will play exactly the same, only now we have control over what plays what. And a case that is going to be entirely different, but we're probably going to be seeing this yeah, in the next video. Let's say, for example, healing small or whatever. We want to pass the state manager and this so, and we can say on the spellcast top we should write a new function though, and maybe we should keep this. Let's see, where is our stats? Character stats. Let's go in here, character stats, and in here we can say public void add health. It's going to be take a value and we're going to be saying health. Do we have health? Oh, it's the HP. So maybe not in here, because these are more of static, which we're going to be changing if we are updating our character. I think we have the health. No, we don't. Well, anyway, let's do it with the HP. It shouldn't matter. And let's go and say, let's go down over here, although we're probably going to change this. Public void add health. And let's go with increments, I believe. The problem with the delegates we have right now is they need to have the same signature, so I cannot pass into my health, I cannot pass a value or something because they need to have the same signature. But yeah, we can just say do an increment. So for example, on your stats, character stats dot fp plus plus. So for each frame you are sitting in here into your character, well, you are doing the health, the spell, the health spell, you're going to be adding into your health. So you're basically healing yourself. And let's see where the other one was. Spell effects manager, save. Let's pin this again. We can say, let's drop it in the loop instead of the stop and say set dot add health. Okay, healing small. Let's do a case to break, say healing small. Of course, because we added this as a healing small, we need to also add this as healing small too. And basically we just want somewhere to call this, to use the spell effect, final references, not final references, on our state manager. We're going to say, not on the handle spellcasting, on the spell action, if we have it. Let's see, yeah, it's over here. Spell action, we are running all of this, and before we play all of that, we can say spell effects, spell effects manager singleton dot add use spell effect. We have our own manager, but yeah, we might have to do something. If the spell requires an enemy state, we might have to change something there, or we might break it even more, but it's not going to be a problem in this case. I'm going to say instance dot spell effect and this state manager. Okay. Let's also write some effects for the fire breath collider, and we're going to say, let's call this breath collider. And we're going to say void on trigger render collider other if not if enemy states es other dot get component in, let's go with parent, enemy states if es not equals null, and es though. Let's see what the do damage does, apart from doing damage. Let's just say public void do damage underscore, because I basically just don't want to pass any action at this point. But for the most part we want to do the same. Let's just take one damage animation over here and say damage animation. Let's hard code this to damage 3. Okay, and let's go back to where we were. Do damage underscore. Okay, so basically if there's somebody inside the breath collider, it's going to play their damage animation. We can also do the same for our fireball, or I think it was the projectile. These are a bit hard coded. Es dot do damage underscore. Yeah, we're going to change this either way in the future. So close this. Let's go add onto our fire breath collider the breath collider script. We should be closing this though on start at least. So on the inventory manager, on init, close party collider, close breath collider, close block collider. if I'm doing a block collider right now, it's going to give me an error because I haven't assigned a block collider. Or actually, yeah, let's go and assign the block collider as well, so we can see what happens. For block collider, we're going to do the same. Close all this, maybe something like this. Let's remove the breath collider, it doesn't matter, the breath script. And this looks kinda correct, I guess, for blocking. We'll see. And let's assign this also into our inventory manager, which is in here. Block collider. Okay, so for this to work now, because right now nothing will be actually happening, we should actually also do another one to our effects. When we should do the fireball again. Void fireball state manager se, and should be spellcast loop, and we just want the emit spell particle. And let's add as effects.add fireball, and this will be 3. It's just that this way gives you a lot more flexibility to do anything. Okay, that's why we're doing it like this, and we can have buff effects, or effects that are for the enemy. So this could work as well, I believe. So for example, we could do void, and let's say, yeah, let's leave it at that. Let's see if this is going to play, and I'm going to show you an example in a bit. Let's lower this, and now we need to go into our spell items and write the spell effect. So for example, fireball is going to be again fireball because that's the ID we gave it. Fire breath is going to again be fire breath if we didn't give it another name. Okay, dark shield is going to be dark shield like this, and healing, we don't have any healing. If we hit play, let's see what the error is. We don't have a spell effect manager inside our scene. Let's create a new empty game object. Let's drop it above, somewhere high. Let's call this spell manager, spell effects manager. Let's also take the resources. I guess we could just use the resource manager. Weapon placer, we don't want the weapon placer. Yeah, this could be on the same object, doesn't matter. Spell effect manager, and let's delete this. Okay, close this, hit play. Let's lock, and let's throw a fireball. Okay, much better. For the most part, it's the same. As you can see though, we now have the behavior. Okay, so this feels a little bit like Star Wars, but anyway. Well, this is pretty cool, regardless. Anyway, okay. for the dark shield, we're going to be doing the same, but at this point we're just doing a block, so it's not really doing anything because we don't have any block behaviors, which is also pretty cool. Okay. Of course, we were going to be doing it to get to lower stamina, not stamina, yeah, and I think both stamina and focus points. But yeah, this is how it's going to play. Let's delete this, we don't want this. So let's do something else. Let's say, let's copy the one of our fireballs or one of the fire. Let's drop it up here. Oops, so this fire, and I want to test something. And for the shape, instead of shape, I want to have mesh render. And let's see which mesh renderer we can use actually. Or mesh renderer, skinned mesh renderer. And let's see if we can use one of the enemies. Enemy here, no. Let's see, it's the cube. Okay, let's see the fire, cube. Oops. Skin mesh renderer. We want cube. Meh. It's kinda working. Use mesh colors. No. Yeah, as you can guess, I just want to make this guy on fire. No. Randomize direction. Not really. Not really. So maybe let's change one of these. Start speed, start lifetime, start size. It's already too large though. Oh. And I think, yeah, this will just start from the triangle. And let's maybe change the size of a lifetime. Let's go with 0.5, I don't know, something like that. Doesn't really matter. Okay. For us, this is going to be that you are doing that this guy is on fire, basically. I'm going to take this fire and I'm going to put it underneath my enemy. Just for that. Yeah, maybe it can loop or not, let's say. Anyway, no, it's not going to loop. And what I'm going to say on my enemy size, you don't have to do this. Okay, this is just an example. And what I'm going to say, I'm going to go and add, let's add another delegate in here and say public delegate void, let's call this spell effect loop. Okay, and then public spell effect loop, spell effect loop. And maybe we can just say to action, to levels, down here, public void on fire. We're going to have to assign the particle though, so that will be public particle system fire particle, and we can say public float timer, or let's just do float t. So if you are on fire, we're going to be saying ft.time, or let's do if t is lower than maybe 5, so for 5 seconds. Else let's write this first, ft time dot delta time, and say fire particle dot emit 1. Else I think just nullify your spell effect should do the trick. So inside your update, if you also have spell effect loop is not null, spell effect loop, run it. Okay, you will see where this comes into play, and this will also be resetting this to 0. And maybe we should also lower this maybe to 3 seconds, because 5 seconds is too much. So we now want somewhere to assign the on fire, and that will be on your spell effect manager. Let's write this void on fire, and because both the player and the enemy can have this, let's do, of course, for our own state manager we won't have anything, so it's just going to stay empty, but we can say if enemy manager not enemy, if e not equals null, then e dot spell this is not an enemy manager, we want enemy states dot spell effect loop will be e dot on fire, and we want this to go away. Okay, so on fire, let's go over here and say as effects dot add on fire. Up now, fire breath, let's add one more case for break on fire, pass the state manager and pass the enemy states, and if they are null, if some of this is null, then it won't really matter. Let's see, we have the proper ones. Actually, yeah. So where we are calling this, let's go into the breath collider, do damage, and the next thing we want to do is spell effects manager dot singleton dot and add spell effect, use spell effect. Let's hard code this to on fire. The state manager is going to be null, and the enemy states, we have them, and it's going to be the yes. Okay, close this. So let's go into this enemy and assign on his state manager the particle, which is going to be this. Drop the fire, fire particle in here, or you can call this on fire. Let's make sure on fire is the correct term or the correct ID, and it is. Of course, we can also do them as statics and only use the statics instead of the IDs. Close and hit play, and let's see, let's change the particle. Okay, and now he's on fire, just like that. Of course, the other guy doesn't have any. Well, this is pretty cool actually. The other guy doesn't have any particles, so you're going to get an error, as you can see. So if you want to be safe, you can do a return. Hit play. Okay, and this is how we put people on fire. Which is pretty cool. Okay, super cool. If we want to do that, to do the same for the fireballs, projectile, on trigger ender, do damage, spell effect manager, singleton dot use spell. The effect is going to be on fire, null, and the enemy stage. And hit play. Let's lock again, and let's throw, and you can see that he's on fire, and he also falls back, because why not? Okay, so I think this is yeah, we should probably end the video here. We are way over an hour, so there's no need to drag this so much, but yeah, with today we've seen how we can basically have a lot more control over our spells, what they're doing, and how each one can have their own behaviors and stuff like that. In the next videos we're probably going to work a little bit with the animations to fix them, or well, I need to find a way to fix them. And yeah, we'll see what we're going to do about that, but for right now it's pretty cool because we can have spells that have their own behaviors, and we basically can do whatever we want with them. If we want to freeze that guy, we can freeze him. If we want to make him you know, jump in the air, you can do it just by using a spell. And this is just super cool, I believe. I hope you're having as much fun as I do. So you know what to do. If you like to see more, if you like to be able to keep making all of this, okay, because all this just take a huge amount of time, then you can support me either on Patreon, where you also get additional rewards depending on your pledge, and or via Gumroad, where you can also buy a few projects and start making your game. Okay, so I'll see you next time.